Alan, Michael Keaton stars in Goodrich. Tell us the story of Goodrich. It's
Yes.
directed by Haley Myers Shire.
Yeah. So this is the story of the Goodrich tire empire. Uh, Michael, no, I'm not. Andy is played by
And by
Michael
the way,
Keaton.
it's not. It's a man named Goodrich who owns an art gallery.
Okay, here we go. So Andy is played by Michael Keaton. He is a art dealer who wakes up one morning to find out that his wife has checked herself into rehab, which kind of explains the entire movie. Here's a guy who is so involved in his work, so oblivious to things around him that he didn't even know A, his wife had a drug addiction, and B, his wife had just checked herself into rehab. So the wife is in rehab for 90 days. That means he has to take care of everything. He has to take care of his two 9-year-old twins. He also has to take care of his 37-year-old daughter, who needs help just doing pregnant women stuff. And also he has a gallery, an art gallery that is failing. Clients are leaving him, and it's just not doing well. The rent is too expensive. They want him to move or shut down the gallery. And so he's on this last final pitch to find the exhibit that will help save his business. So along the way, he basically realizes how much of a sucky dad and husband he's been. And he kind of goes on this journey to earn back the respect of the women in his life. And that's what this movie is. I will say this movie is 2 hours long, and it's half an hour too long. For me, the movies that we like, the reason why we like some movies that people like and other movies we don't like is because at some point in this movie, there needs to be some kind of a connection point. Some point in this movie that you as the viewer can. And halfway through this movie, I was like, this is just really boring and bland. And it really wasn't until the end, closer to the end of the movie, that I started connecting with the character of Andy here. He's a guy who keeps his emotions close to his vest. He's a guy who is super positive when it comes to the people in his life, but so much so that his positivity has a way of disconnecting himself emotionally from the people in his life. And here's a guy who keeps it all in. And as his world falls apart around him, he refuses to accept the realities of what's happening. And weirdly enough, I found myself, feeling familiar with this kind of person.
I did too, Alan. I
Yeah.
did too. I felt very much. And I'll say about the movie, you're on the right track with this thing.
Yeah.
It's a drama. I love Michael Keaton. I can't believe this is the same guy who played Beetlejuice like a month ago, right? He's in Beetlejuice. He's in this. He's amazing. Great actors. It reminds me of a 70s family drama that takes place over several months with dramatic things happening. It takes place over 3 months. His wife's in rehab, but the movie is written and directed by a woman, and it's all about how this lead character, this male, the patriarch of the family, has failed them all.
Mm-hmm.
And how he's, no matter how hard he tries to be the good man, Goodrich, right? He's a failure in failing to meet their needs. And he thinks maybe too much about himself and not about the women in his life. I'll say as much as I'm mixed on this movie, it got me. The relationship with him and his older daughter and going through her pregnancy.
Yeah.
Mila Kunis is amazing.
Yeah, there's a moment at the end where, obviously in a movie like this, things come to a head, and she goes off on him, and it is the best scene in this movie. It is the most emotionally honest moment in this movie. And honestly, this moment in the movie is the single reason for you to watch this movie.
Yeah, it is. I'll say I get to bear recommend because of that, because that scene, it's all the confusing emotions about a father-daughter relationship.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's juggling kind of two families. He has the new wife, younger wife, with the 9-year-old twins, and he juggles that being the good dad. And by the way, the young girl in this movie, you might recognize her. She played Princess Leia in the
Ah,
Obi-Wan series, and she is phenomenal in
yeah,
this. And she was terrible in Obi-Wan. So the young girl, I don't know her name.
it's I'll find it, but
She is great. She's so clever and funny and witty and honest, and that there are a lot of character moments that really worked for me, which is why this gets kind of a bare recommend. There's also Michael Keaton, who's so good, and it's a kind of movie they don't make anymore. They don't make like just a solid family drama, right? And so for that, I really commend it. But as you said, probably a half hour too long.
mm.
There's some
It's an
moments.
hour 50. It's an hour 50 minutes, and that Mila Kunis scene happens probably at the hour 35 minute mark.
Yeah, it could have been shorter, but I'll say this: phenomenal performance by Mila Kunis, all the actors. So, and then like you forget that Keaton can do this, and they tried to get this movie made for years. Years. This movie was like sat around forever trying to get it funded because it's not a superhero movie, not a bunch of special effects.
Mhm.
It's just a family drama. And I will give it up for just I did get choked up. And also I got choked up during a couple parts, but I'll say the humor is very good and it feels very real. So a bare recommend from me. What about you, Alan?
Not a recommend for me. I think, like I said, I found a connection point, but I feel like I'm the only one who really found that connection point. I think this movie will appeal to a very small audience. I think the other thing there, I'm seeing this in films lately where it seems like they're trying to. There's a moment where Kunis kind of freaks out, and her husband comes in and kind of walks her through the steps of not freaking out, and I feel like a good portion of this movie is kind of a way for the director and the writer to say, this is how I think men should relate to women in the world. And it's almost like womansplaining. That let me I wrote
Yeah,
it
that's the
down.
thing that bothered me. The thing
Yeah.
that bothered me, wait, just real quick. And we do have our guest is here. We'll
Okay.
get in
Here,
5
let me
minutes.
read what I wrote here, because there's a lesson that I see in modern movies today where filmmakers need to teach men how to relate to women, wives, and daughters, and that's what I felt like this movie was. It was a lecture in a way of how of how men should be interacting with the women in their lives, and I felt like it was too on the nose, that it was a bit lectury and a little bit condescending, as opposed to, I would much rather, if that was the goal, have it kind of slip in and have it kind of feel organic to a situation, as opposed to feeling like a lecture out of nowhere.
It did feel like that, and that's where I'm like mixed on it. I give it a bare recommend mainly for Michael Keaton's performance and Mila Kunis as well. I love that she can go there, and she really played it real. But you're right, that was the part of the movie that bothered me the most. I felt like it was basically he had failed all the women,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't even lean in on his relationship to his son, right? At
Yeah.
all.
No,
It's
not at all.
very weird how like the sun is like barely there. So yeah, it's ultimately. I mean, I was kind of the more I thought about it, I was disappointed. But while watching it, I love Michael Keaton. He's just the fact that he looks almost the same as when he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
He's really one of those ageless men.
Yeah,
So
I mean, as much as Michael Keaton gives a great performance here, and you talked about Mila Kunis, who's fantastic, I can't recommend the I can't, in good faith, tell you that this is a good use of an hour and 50 minutes of your time.
Well, you've got a non-recommend from Alan, a barely recommend from me, so your mileage may vary on Goodrich. Do what you will.